One morning, she burnt his shirt while she ironed. As punishment, he pressed a hot iron to her skin while their baby cried in the next room. Here is the whole story. He had screamed at her and pushed their breakfast to the floor, then left the hotel room. He came back after a few minutes. A hotel staff followed behind closely. It was an elderly kind lady. He told her the tablecloth had slipped and their breakfast had fallen onto the floor. He told her it had all been an accident and asked for another serving. Then he turned and smiled at her. She blushed and looked down. She reassured herself it was all just a small misunderstanding. It had just been that and nothing else. She was sure he loved her. A person of his kind, of course, could sometimes be passionate and then boil over into outbursts. Her love for him over time was going to calm down those nerves. When the staff left, he pulled her out of her chair. He hugged her. He kissed her on the forehead and then smiled. He said he was sorry. His reaction had been quite uncalled for. Then he warned her seriously to be careful, not to anger him again like that. She thought he meant well, wasn't he? He was protecting her, wasn't he? He kissed her on the lips. He told her they were going to go for shopping immediately after their breakfast. She was elated. She was the happiest girl alive. She just couldn't wait for breakfast to end, for her to spoil herself with that shopping. After breakfast, they went shopping. She pointed. Items were packed. She shopped until she couldn't anymore. She left the mall with a suitcase of new jeans, new tops, new dresses, and underwear. For lunch, they had a buffet, and when it was done, they walked hand in hand through the streets of Mombasa. They visited the coastal white sand beaches. They played on the beach, built castles in the sand, swam and lay on the beach in the evening to watch the sunset. Then they went dancing and sipped champagne between songs until late in the morning. In the morning. The morning's outburst faded from her mind. She was sure it would never ever happen again. When they returned, Clark refused to let her go back to her hostel. He insisted she move in with him. She wanted to be close to him, so she straight away agreed without any kind of hesitation. Why not? It was a new house. He had barely lived in it. He said now it could feel like a home. Her heart melted. The house sat on a hill. From there she could see the whole city spread out below. At night, the lights from the city made it feel so magical. The house had everything: a stocked kitchen, a king-size bed, fine linen, a big TV, and expensive sofas. All 5 bedrooms in the house were en suite. She felt she was living a dream. She was. She pictured their kids running through the room. She imagined her friends sipping wine on the balcony on weekends. She saw herself strolling down the hill with Clark, her husband. She told herself he would be her husband. She would marry him and love him forever, wouldn't she? Clark was a busy man. He would leave early every morning, but was always back home by 5 p.m. in the evening. Then they would spend their evenings cuddling on the sofa, watching movies, or dining somewhere in the posh hotels around town. She loved to cook. She was good at it. He loved her food and was always asking for more. So he kept the kitchen stocked. He would leave envelopes of cash each morning for her to go shopping. She thought she was the luckiest girl alive. Where else could anyone find such a loving man? The first month together felt like a holiday, an everyday holiday. Then she missed her periods. Fear gripped her heart. She wasn't ready to be a mother yet, not yet. She had no idea how Clark would react to that. They had never spoken about children. Her mind raced with questions. What if he rejected her for it? And she had to be on her own with a baby. Where would she go? How would she survive alone? She had no job, no career. Meeting Clark had ended all those dreams. He gave her everything, and she had told herself he was here for good. There was no need for her to go working or have a career. But the morning sicknesses began. They left her weak and exhausted. She tried to hide it at first, but Clark noticed, and he insisted they go see his doctor. The doctor confirmed her fears. She was pregnant. When she heard, for a moment her heart stopped. Then Clark burst with joy, hugged her, lifted her high. He was delighted. He kept saying he was going to be a dad. He was jovial. That whole evening he had been restless with joy. She did not know how to tell her parents about it. Clark encouraged her. He promised he would be available and would take full responsibility. When she broke the news to her parents, they were overjoyed. They wanted their union officiated as soon as possible. Clark did not wait to hear what her parents had said. It was at dinner in a hotel parlor with a live band playing. He proposed to her. It had been a perfect kind of surprise. The ring came hidden inside a piece of cake. She did not see it. When her knife touched it as she tried to eat the cake, Clark went down on one knee. She cried. She jumped. She said yes, Clark. That night he gave her keys to a brand new Lexus. He said his wife needed to have her own car. She drove it around proudly through the city, showing it off at every chance she got. The marriage plans moved very quickly. Her parents met his family for the first time, and in June they wedded under the blazing sun. The reception was grand, the food exquisite. Relatives talked about it for months. Her relatives, I mean. Then they flew to the Bahamas for a honeymoon, a boat cruise, white beaches, a 5-star hotel by the water. For 2 weeks, it was paradise. Or was it? See, it was during the honeymoon that things began to change. In the Bahamas, Clark had grown unusually quiet. She thought he was exhausted from the wedding stress. She had not yet learned how to speak to him openly. It was hard to predict his reactions, especially after the Mombasa incident, so she stayed quiet about it. They moved through the beautiful places, but returned to a silent hotel. Sometimes she went out alone. Clark stayed behind on his laptops, answering emails, and would leave when she came back. Everything she needed was available, but he felt distant. When he spoke, it was only to ask her to bring something. The hotel TV had been her daily companion. While also on the honeymoon, one night, she raised an issue. She was starting to feel heavy and slow due to the pregnancy. She suggested hiring a maid. He had looked at her, switched off the TV, and his eyes immediately blazed with fury. He then demanded to know why he had married her. She had no job, he said. The house was her only number one duty. There was no need for a maid. She insisted it would be a temporary kind of arrangement. Then he grabbed her hand, squeezed it until she could feel the blood in her veins stop moving. With the other hand, he held her by the jaws and pulled her close to his face. His eyes showed he could harm her, and badly. He made it clear, very clear, there would never be a maid in his house. He told her he would never have married her if a maid could do everything, including giving birth for him. They returned from honeymoon in silence. She told herself the silence, it was momentary, blamed it on wedding fatigue. She reassured herself he would change. He did not. The distance rather between them, it just grew wider and wider and continued growing every day. She was alone most days. Clark would come home past midnight. He was never remorseful about it. In fact, he ordered her never ever to go to bed before he returned. Sometimes he would come back as late as 4 a.m. in the morning. In all this, money and provision were never really an issue. He still left envelopes stashed with cash each morning for her to go and do shopping. It is his presence that had vanished all of a sudden. Even in the final weeks of her pregnancy, she was still doing everything alone. She stayed up late waiting for him and then would wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. to cook, clean, shop, and iron for him. Her body ached with exhaustion. One evening, after a very draining day for her, she served food that was half-cooked and overly salted. Without a word, Clark stood, carried the plate with its food, and poured it over her head. Hot sauce and food ran down her face. Then she slapped her hard across the face. He gripped her by the neck, while unbuckling his belt. It happened so fast she froze. He pinned her to the wall, his face twisted with fury while he raised his belt to strike her. He stopped and looked at her intently for a moment. Then he lowered his hand slowly. He said, this time he was forgiving her because of the child she was carrying. Then ordered her to clean the mess, clean herself, and make him a smoothie. She burned with anger. She was angry at herself for being so naive. She was angry at Clark for being such kind of a monster. This was not the life she wanted, but she had said to herself and said yes to Clark. Now she was trapped. No one had ever raised their hand on her, not even her parents. Yet this man had done it in less than a year of knowing her. She was heavily pregnant with his child. Did he not see that? She kept asking herself. A part of her, even in this moment, still believed she deserved it. She told herself it had been her fault. How could she serve bad food to her husband? How could she? The next day, Clark came home early. He came bearing flowers. He embraced her and apologized for his actions. He cautioned her not to anger him like that ever again. He assured her he loved her more than she could ever imagine. She was his everything. His words sounded sincere. She smiled. She was convinced he meant it. That evening, he took her out for dinner. It felt like Clark was finally home and back. Was he? That very night when they came back, the labor pains began. Clark panicked. He rushed her immediately to the hospital. The following morning, she gave birth to a bouncing baby boy. Clark was overjoyed. He kept repeating to himself, and to her, he was now a dad. She was happy. They were now a complete family. When they were back home, Clark stayed for 3 days without going to work. He did everything in the house. He even served her meals in the bed. On the third day, Clark called his sister Tamara from university to come and help. Now, Tamara was very kind. She cooked and cared for the baby as if it were hers. When her parents visited, she assured them, oh, all was good, all was okay. And the next day, Clark's driver drove her parents back home. After a week, Tamara announced she was leaving. She had her final exams coming up. She felt a rush of panic vibrate through her body. How would she manage alone? On the other hand, Clark was unbothered, unmoved, remained cool about it. She could not raise the issue of the marriage again. He had made it very clear, plainly clear, there would never be a maid in his house, not his house. The next morning at 5 a.m. sharp in the morning, Clark woke her up. She had barely slept. The baby had been crying all night. He told her her duties had to resume. He said his mom had given birth to him while she was in the garden, and the following day she had resumed planting in her garden. Life moved on, he said. Then he told her to wake up and make him his breakfast. He was late for work. Now that was the start of her true misery. Each morning she would wake up and begin her day in tears and end her day in tears. She would cry in silence, hiding the tears away from Clark. She knew Pete was not something that Clark served. She was not sleeping. The baby cried all night. Most nights she dozed on the sofa in the living room, only to be woken up by the alarm at 5 a.m. sharp every morning. Sometimes she had to tie the baby at her back while she prepared Clark's breakfast. About the weekend, day by day, she lost weight. She feared one day she would maybe just collapse and die. A month after giving birth, one day Clark returned and food was not yet ready. The baby had cried all day. She had spent hours soothing it. Clark demanded for food. She explained, it will be ready soon. He grabbed her by the hair, dragged her from the kitchen. The baby was still tied to her back, dragged her all the way to the living room. He ripped the baby forcefully and roughly off her back and threw it to the sofa. She held her breath, praying it would not fall. Then he beat her for close to half an hour. Every part of her body took the blows. When he was done, he left the house. She lay on the floor, unable to move, where the baby cried and cried until it slept. Later, she crawled, checked on the baby. It was asleep. In the kitchen, the food was burnt. The next day, he returned with flowers, as always. He apologized and took her out for dinner. He was always very remorseful after beating her. She never knew how to take that. Her heart was bleeding. What had become of the charming man she had married and had first met? What had she done to deserve this kind of situation? What broke her most was the stubborn love that she still felt for this man. She loved him so much. She loved him, and she was confused on what to do about it. So she kept trying to look for things that could make her marriage work. She did everything there was to do in order to appease Clark. The more she tried, the more distant he became. He started staying out at night sometimes and would only come home to change clothes before leaving again for days. His returns were irregular. She never asked where he was on those nights. When he was not home. She was dying to know. She was worried for her marriage, so one night, against all good judgment, while Clark slept, she took his phone. There was another woman. Her name was Cynthia. Clark kept an apartment for her in the city suburbs. She was furious, but knew better than to confront him about it, of course. Despite all her suffering, she told no one about it. Friends had admired her wedding and the luxury she had married into. They were always sending her messages praising her good life. She played along to keep up with the appearances. Even her parents never knew about it. Clark was a wealthy man and connected. They could not protect her enough, and it would crush them to know that Clark abused her. She felt trapped. Clark had warned her several times, on many occasions, if she dared ever to leave him, he would look for her, find her, and kill her and the baby. He had the money, the connections, and the heart for it. She was sure. She thought she had seen the worst. And then one morning, while ironing for Clark, the iron slipped and burnt his new shirt so badly. When he saw the burnt patch, he was furious. He pushed her down, started beating her with his belt at first. This time, he did not stop there. He kicked her, picked her up, and kept slamming her against the walls. Her face started to bleed, then pinned her down again on the ground. Then he tore off her nightdress. He grabbed the iron, which was very hot and still plugged in, and then started to press it against her bare skin. First the stomach, then the thighs, then her back. Each time he lifted it, it came off with skin. The room smelled of burnt flesh. The pain was so much, she passed out. She woke up 2 hours later, naked on a bloody floor. The baby crying in the next room. She couldn't move. She thought she was going to die, and for a moment she thought that would be relief. But the baby kept crying and crying. She could not die. The child needed her. She crawled, screaming and wincing in pain until she reached the baby's room. She reached for the baby. It grew quiet, as if it knew and understood her situation. She held it against her chest while wincing, and started to suck the little milk it could find in her breasts. Fever burned through her body because of the burns. She sobbed while the baby cried on her breasts. She was helpless. She passed out again. The next morning, she opened her eyes to a kind face. It was a nurse. She told her Clark had brought her to the clinic last night at midnight. He had told them she had suffered an accident back at home. The baby was asleep beside her on the bed. The nurse had fed it. The doctor came the following morning. He was polite but concerned. He assured her she would recover soon. He pointed to fresh flowers on a table with a note. Clark had left them, she said. He said to her. She stayed in the clinic for 2 weeks. The staff cared for her. The baby The wounds began to heal into new scars. Clark never visited. He only sent flowers and notes each morning. She never read the notes. This time she decided she was not going to let Clark kill her. She was going to live. At whatever cost, she was going to live. When she was discharged, Clark came to pick her. He was ashamed and avoided her eyes all the time. At home, the living room was covered in candles, roses, cards, and a very big poster saying he was sorry. He had wine and food waiting. He sat her down, knelt, and laid his head on her laps and kissed her hand as he apologized. But this time she was done. She pretended. She whispered she was okay and promised not to cross him again. That night he gave her keys to a very brand new Range Rover. For a year she had been saving the money Clark had been leaving in the envelopes. It was a lot of money, so she couldn't use it all. She out of that money she had built a small reserve. Quietly, she started to plan for escape. With the money she saved, she secured a visa. One day while Clark was away, she left with her baby. 10 years have now passed. Clark is still alive and remarried. While abroad, she had divorced him and refused to take anything from him. Perhaps she should have taken some of that property, I say, because right now she regrets it. Because she survives now on odd jobs to support her child. Every time she talks about love, this is all the story she can tell. A sad story of her life. Ladies and gentlemen, this was more than just a tale of a woman. It's a reflection of love twisted into control, marriage turned into abuse and the silent struggles many endure behind closed doors. These are the things people never talk about. It shows how quickly affection can become violence and how survival sometimes means walking away, and walking away when it's still early, when it's still possible. Love without respect is not love. Marriage without safety is not marriage. Abuse should never feel like a victim's fault. Stories like this remind us why we keep speaking, why we must keep exposing what happens in silence, and why no one should ever feel trapped or alone. At EzroniX, we tell these stories like this to inspire change, to open eyes, to start conversations and dialogues about things that affect us, given our mission. And we're using stories like this to bring out such kind of struggles and then build resilience. So if this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel, like the video, share it with friends, and please leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, you can expect a new story from us every week right here. You also can find our links to EzroniX website for more stories for you to read, including children's stories. And you can also click on a link in the description for our newsletter for you to receive updates every new week. I remain Ezron here at EzroniX. Till next time, next week. Adios.